Well, welcome everyone. I'm Ron Klotz, one of the executives here at Godland and one of the original architects of Prophecy. Been working with Cloud Suite Industrial, excuse me, probably 30 years or so. Been in thousands of shop floors, and today I want to share with you just some of the evolutions and things that are kind of occurring within the manufacturing realm, especially around automation, the use of machines, how we kind of change the operator dynamic. So today we're going to take a look at kind of the industrial Internet of Things, our Prophecy application, and a number of capabilities within that, which really target what I would consider. I saw this list and it was like, yeah, that's pretty much what everybody's dealing with. A lot of the operational improvements that folks are looking for. Obviously, when you look at overall equipment effectiveness, and then I would also throw in there OLE, which is labor efficiency, that's right after it, right? So think of those two metrics as kind of being key operational desires for a lot of companies, because they know the opportunity sitting there. If we improve those metrics, all that goes right to the bottom line, and sometimes we'll increase the top line because we get better customer satisfaction. We're delivering on time, especially in those environments to where it's critical that we're meeting those customer expectations. Now, to start this, I do want to set the preface that Prophecy's a little different from maybe some of the traditional systems that you've worked with. If you've been around Sightline and now Cloud Suite Industrial, you know there's been a number of so-called timekeeping applications, and Infor has a very solid application within their whole factory track suite, right? A lot of that is predicated on an operator that will engage an interface or a tablet and the like, and we're going to get information that's going to be collected through the process. That usually gets and results in a transaction that occurs within Sightline or Cloud Suite Industrial that then gets reviewed, and it goes in for costing and all those great things. Well, Prophecy was predicated on not everything has to be reviewed as just on a transactional basis. Yes, we do want to create transactions because that's very important for scheduling, costing, all those wonderful things. But because it is a living network, as things are happening in real time, there's some opportunity there to how we're going to monitor and how we review kind of the next paradigm shift in the shop floor for more real-time information and more engagement. And that's really the whole premise of today, is we're going to talk about what I would say is the connected worker platform. We want teams to engage, yes, but it's got to be simple, easy access, and then ultimately it's all about speed and efficiency. We totally believe that as this evolution is starting to take place and we're bringing in more equipment and more sensors and more automated processes, it's got to be around how can we mitigate and sometimes reduce the amount of operator engagement it takes to actually give information back to the important systems and the various stakeholders within the production operations. So what we look at is we look at two sides of this. Obviously, companies have made large investments into their equipment. This equipment is getting smarter. It's getting more sophisticated. Sometimes, there's equipment that may not be so smart that's on your shop floor, right? Well, there's opportunity for any and all of that. And then there's those processes to where on the worker side, it's where workers may be manning 1 or 5 different machines. It could be a worker's just doing a manual assembly process. There's times in which automation isn't necessarily at the forefront because it may be very manually intensive in nature, right? Well, our application in the Smart Factory has got to embrace both sides of that equation. So let's take the journey. Over the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to take you on a whirlwind tour, and we're going to see and look at some of the possibilities that you may want to engage and deploy on your shop floor. First side, let's talk about what the equipment piece is all about. Equipment automation is an interesting opportunity. Like I said, these machines are getting very, very sophisticated. Where possible, we may decide that, and you can just be able to connect to some of the machines. The trouble with the connections these days is these machine builders are getting very walled off and very secured because they want to charge, or maybe you have to buy extra software for the machine platforms. So it is an opportunity in some cases to where you can connect. We do speak all the languages. And then from that connection, think of that high-speed streaming data. When we start to really look and analyze and how we may utilize that, well, that's where we have an opportunity to obviously have data going into Sightline. We have data that's also one of the newest projects that we're working on is we're working with Infor within the data lake and some AI and ML. And I'm going to touch on that kind of at the end. But it's within this opportunity. Sometimes we can connect two machines because within the connections, there's opportunity there. But in other cases, we may just work with what's one of these these edge devices. These edge devices are now very inexpensive in nature. What do? It allows us an opportunity to get what is really machine data, but not having to tap into the PLC, which is the heart and the brains of the machine that the equipment builders are very protective over. So these sensing devices just sit in proximity wirelessly, and then they can measure everything from voltage to temperature to pressure and the like. And from that, you get those key critical pinch or key critical failure points, and we can still be very proactive and stay on top of maintenance and all those wonderful things without ever having to touch the machine itself, which for a lot of companies, there's a big advantage to that. So depends on your shop floor environment and how this kind of all flows. But just know that we have a lot of capabilities within Prophecy and Smart Factories to be able to do that. Now, on this equipment side, we also recognize that manufacturers are not all the same, but there are some machine platforms that could be kind of the same. So within this, in the equipment side, oh, I got one slide out of place. Hold on. Let me kind of get in and show this from a design standpoint. When we look at this from a design standpoint, we have obviously all the connections, and then within the design studio, this is kind of like Mongoose and Sightline. So we give you design tools and a palette, so you can go in and design everything from what your operators will engage with to what visualizations you maybe want on your TVs on the shop floor, and that would be the andon boards. So this is an opportunity depending on machine platform, CNCs, press brakes. We have certain lasers, welders, plasma, right? Robots, and in all of those, they may be some that we just need streaming data from, some we would maybe need operator engagement, and I'll discuss why that's important in a second. So this design studio allows us to build everything from the operator interface to maybe my plan overviews, my machine asset cards, and to be able to get a DNA of how my shop floor is working. So in a typical shop floor, we have operators that are usually engaging in some type of interface. This is kind of analysis to if we have a screen that we'd be keying into factory track or something, right? But the difference being is that there is live machine information that may be coming in as part of the process for the operator, because it may be critical to know if I'm at a certain temperature threshold or a certain speed or a certain feed, because that's important for traceability or process control and trying to mitigate scrap for the like, right? So these operator interfaces can take on all types of personas. You can see here 300-ton press doesn't look anything like a CNC, or if we're doing a manual assembly operation with no machine connected, right? Well, they all can look and operate very differently. The whole goal in mind with this is we want a simplified operator interface that is intelligent by design. So if something is needed or to be communicated, then the operator will see that without having to change screens or go anywhere else. Now, as operators engage here, guess what? We have maybe TVs that are across the group. So here, maybe all my 300-ton presses, I got one view showing the status and the state of every 300-ton press within the plant or within that resource group. And within that, I can see the kind of the states of those machines. That gives me a lot of DNA about what's happening. Here, I've got a cell of maybe some CNCs, and I'll show you a live example in a minute, and then we'll drill down to asset card. And then obviously you want dashboards, you want visualizations. We do have a dashboard creation tool within Prophecy. If you're on Cloud Suite, because we are publishing data to Data Lake and into CSI, then of course Burst is also a viable option for customers that kind of want to do their own with their dashboards. So let's go out and take a quick look at this equipment automation side and maybe show a few examples, and then we'll continue our journey. So let me do this. So I'm over in Cloud Suite Industrial. I am running in the cloud, so we can run in cloud and on-prem as long as it's, I think, Sightline 902 or later, and that deals with how we're communicating via the REST API. So this gives me a visual representation of kind of what's going on my shop floor, like I mentioned a moment ago. So here I can see that I have kind of a virtual factory. I can launch this out and I can see exactly kind of what's going on. So if I've got a whole number of, this little example, I got a bunch of press brakes that are out there, but you can see that they're kind of segmented according to how my factory is. So depending on how you've laid out your factory and how it's compartmentalized and zoned off, and you got your resource groups or departments, right? This would be a visualization, because remember, this is done through our design tool. So this can be exactly like your shop floor. So here you can see I've got some flashing green red lights. Well, this is usually running in the president or the production manager's office, because most of the time they're attracted right here to the red. The red means I have a machine down. Well, how do we know that? Well, an operator can hit a button on their interface or their shop floor HMI, or it could be I've detected a machine fault. That machine fault is one of those either censored or connections we have that determines that maybe I've got a fault condition and now the machine is down, right? So there could be a number of ways that we do this, but the whole thing to take away from this is that that machine down, there's no transaction in Sightline that there is a downtime one now. They recently added that, but it's not something we want to go review. This is something I want to deal with right at the moment, right? This is, I have a down urgent condition and now several things need to happen. Obviously, maintenance is a part of that. I'll talk about that in a moment. But as you can see, this board gives us a lot of visual representations. I can see that I have some in setup. This light blue is where maybe an operator has hit a button and says, I need some supervisory help. I can see the machines are offline. That could be a number of reasons. And here we've detected that we've got some scrap. Now, with any of this, drill down is also important and available. So within those, be it CNCs or press brakes, I can show real-time information that's coming in. As you can see here, we are monitoring off this particular machine. I got some spindle speed and some load and some coolant. You can see all those are running real time because those are variables and they operate with a low and a high limit. Why is that important? That means if I get out of bounds, either too high, too low, I am going to get an alarm that's going to fire off and tell me that I have a situation, right? We also have rate of change, meaning if that speed or pressure goes up or down by a certain rate, we also may want to get engaged, right? So this is an opportunity. Here I can see that I've got some alarm counts that are starting to mount up based on this. That could be a dull tool. It could be I've got some operator challenges, right? So within these views, this gives the maybe the more experienced supervisors, maybe team leads and the production management team a chance to get insights of really what's happening without having to try to create or chase transactions in a system, right? This is vastly different from that. You can also see over here, we're doing some maintenance calculations. And this is now based on if I run so many hours of so much product, I want to calculate a PM and when that's to do, right? That's one basis of a calculation. And I'm going to talk about another one toward the end today. But right here is the heartbeat of manufacturing. The green represents the time that I've been running, throwing chips, and probably making money. Here is the challenge, and the other sides, I can see tooling, equipment failure, maintenance. Oh, look at this, material shortage. There's no transaction in Sightline that says I'm waiting on material. But however, in Prophecy, we detect that state, and now I can collect time against if an operator is waiting on material. Another great example of this is we're dealing here, and I can go right over to my CNC view. And what I have here is a collection of like Haas vertical lathes. What's important is look at the job numbers that are down here. How did I have those job numbers? Is because an operator on his interface, let's wake this guy up, said that I'm going to be running this CNC or this Haas vertical lathe, and I'm going to be working on from a dispatch list a certain work order. That's exactly how the interface over here knows that I'm working on the work order, because the operator selected that. The minute they select that, we display the information. That doesn't have to reside in a transaction that we go and try to monitor and display out in some way. That's not the way that works. It really all culminates here from an operator engaging from a dispatch list or a group, or depends on the queue, how you want to display that, but it's all engaged from this particular arena. So here we see some things. Now that's that high spindle load we looked at a moment ago. That could be from a number of factors. But notice here, this one's running. The greens are really good, but notice the blue. I'm waiting on material, and I have been for 28 minutes. Now we want to talk about efficiencies, right? How you start to really get to root cause analysis on your shop floor and your situation. It's being able to categorize these elements that are getting in the way between an operator and a machine, or any combination therein, of producing a quality part on time. So that's not good. Obviously, that's probably one that we would want to investigate and get to the details of why we're waiting on material. It could be we're waiting on raw material to come in because scrap or some other reason, or we could be waiting on material to get picked up so that we can, or we have space considerations. But notice these two right here. Setup time has been exceeded by 39 minutes. How do we know that? I read the job in Sightline. I read the standard or the takt time for the setup, the same way that I'm reading the standard or the takt time here for the operation. And in there, I've already exceeded that. Now, there again, I'm putting you live at the situation now. Normally, this has to get keyed in, and then somebody will review open transactions to maybe even close to monitoring this. But most companies don't. It's too hard. Well, here we put you front and center. We can send off and do things to display something to the operator to let them know they're over time, right? But certainly you see this on an and-on board, because this could be running on a TV over that group. So every operator knows within the area that maybe they need to give help to this individual. Maybe they're a new operator and they're having issues. Here I notice the operator just down speeded the machine because maybe he's getting a chatter or a tool, right? Could be an issue. Here we've had runtime exceeded by 3 hours. That's probably an issue, right? So I think everyone gets the gist. This is a scenario that it kind of brings the DNA of what's actually happening on the shop floor kind of front and center of where everyone is at. And it all starts with engagement from an operator interface, to where an operator is selecting job. They can see their setup instructions, their work instructions. This actually comes from the Sightline job. And we can also view the drawing. So this is for that little gear and the profile of what I need to do. And now the operator has really everything they need. And as they're engaging through the process, be it start setup, for example, all it takes for the operator to engage in setup is to basically hit a button. When he engages in setup, we now know the mode we're in. And guess what? All my displays through my shop will say that I'm now engaged in setup on that machine. So that's the smart factory DNA of how things are moving and shaking constantly at the speed of production. That's really what the smart factory is all about, is trying to give companies the ability to be in the present as production is happening without a ton of extra work on the operator. Now, when the operator comes back or he places load on the machine, he can either hit this button to start his run, which is now putting run hours against the job. We've left the setup mode. Now that setup button only occurs if setup is required on the job. That's an indication of it kind of being intelligent. But we can see now I'm starting to run a batch. I've got a profile out 24 of those gears. I can see that I'm starting to work. I've been running for 9 minutes. Now, what's happening over in the background when I go over and look at Cloud Suite, over in the unposted job tran, I'm just going to refresh this. So when that operator did that setup a second ago, we'll see that I have now that job, I have that operator, and I have my machine, and I put a total of, well, very little setup time against it. But there was no really clock in and clock out. It was a button press and another button press that automatically triggered the transaction. And that's a very simple illustration of how we're trying to give you a live and present system, but yet we will create and automate transactions and do things back in Sightline so that the operator doesn't have to spend a lot of time on its value activity. But if they have spent a lot of time at it, that becomes non-value add activity. So that's the way this works. We got also in the operator interface, there's a couple of things to take note. Here it's asking for a quality measurement. You can read the quality plan in Sightline from QCS, bring that in so we could update the quality plan. In this case, I am doing a pass-fail, so it's actually checking my tolerance to make sure that I'm okay. Not that you'd want to do that, but it's just an illustration of what is possible. Now, with any of this, I can say that I need to pause the machine because something's going on, or we could detect a variable and I might need to engage maintenance. So this is a scenario that, depending on the operator and maybe going to break and the like, they certainly can pause, or if they stop the machine, then we will prompt for that. Now, what happens if an operator engages in maintenance over in Cloud Suite Industrial? It actually creates in the maintenance or the service area, it creates the incident. Here's one that was created for an overheated sensor. We not only bring in the data related to that, we also bring in any of the variables that we could have detected, like the fault codes that would come from the machine. Now, if you're running the service module with the mobile app, this could be deployed right on the mobile app to a service tech that can go out and see the escalation. Obviously, an email could get sent out or text message, depending on how you have your system configured. But there's a lot of ways to engage your team, or it could show up on just one of those TV screens. You don't have to do any of this, right? It can be very simple in nature, or it can be very holistic. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, let's say, for example, that resource is also connected over to where you want to charge out the maintenance time, but we also want to create a shift exception for APS. So that unplanned downtime could have a scheduling impact for APS. And that's the whole predicate of how the maintenance ticket is tied out to the resource and the resource maintenance, so that we could also create a shift exception for APS. So you can see this can take on a very holistic view, but also take away. This could be very simple in nature. I want a simple way for an operator to engage. I want them to come in, and if they need to do something related to a tolerance, I do a pass-fail. Here, I'm out of tolerance. So it's going to say, okay, maybe I have a tooling issue. I've already quarantined a piece of scrap. Well, I can update my work order for that, and I can print a bar-coded quality control tag label. We do integrate with Bartender, so that's all possible. And of course, now I've quarantined that off. So the last thing I'll show you is back over in Cloud Suite. When we look at our unposted, notice we had set up a second ago. If I hit refresh now, we're going to see that I've got one more transaction in there, and that's for the scrap part for the tooling fixture issue that the operator declared. Now, with a lot of our customers, they don't have operators go ahead and commit that. What they do is they would submit the scrap for approval. So that's another little step you can add. They may add a lot of comfort so that it doesn't end up in a transaction that may not be accurate in nature. So you can submit those scrap transactions for approval. And then lo and behold, when we're all finished up, we're going to have our parts being completed, our total hours and runtime. We're going to move this to stock, and the whole job will have been completed with a few button clicks, if you will, through the Prophecy operator interface. And like I said, everything on the interface is automatically driving my live screens and my live andons. And so you have a completely connected worker to equipment automation scenario. Okay, so let's now take a look at kind of the next area of automation. And this is really moving on from equipment automation to worker automation. One of the things we noticed when we started this journey originally is that there's companies that fall somewhere between manual paper and needing all the capabilities of a factory track or time track with all the rules and all the sophistication. Well, what we wanted to create is kind of like it's a step up from that manual data entry or writing things down, and we wanted a basic way to create some very simple transactions. Like I said, these are not sophisticated like factory track. Factory track and time track have a lot of deep functionality for manufacturers that are going to get into a lot of serials and traceability and, tying serials to bombs and all those type of things, right? This is not that. This is, I just wanted a way that I didn't have to build some of the diagrams or displays for an operator that could come in and simply start a shift, break in and out, maybe do a standard job or a team job and do some setup and those type of things, right? We want it to be very simple, but very flat in nature. This doesn't have a ton of what I would consider rules or complexity around that. Now, obviously, this is obviously designed for unlimited users. You run this on a tablet. It's HTML5 in nature. You could run it on your phone. And the whole goal was to bring in maybe some label and barcode support, bring in some messaging capabilities, and also bring in some very simple supervisory capabilities. So in here, just when employees are running and they engage in something, a supervisor can see this list and know exactly what their employees are engaged in, right? So there's a very simple way to know what's going on. This is a lot better than having something keyed in paper or written down, turned in to one of the admins that then have to key that in, and then the next day or so you run reports. This gives you a chance to see, okay, what's my employees engaged in at the moment, right? At the moment, because some of this will result obviously in transactions, but some things you want to know about what's going on front and center. This also gives you the ability to see real-time production information. Here, everything from the jobs, am I running, am I in setup? And then this, the red, green, and yellow, is actually comparing against the job standard. So there again, without anything really crazy, we do set this up to where this refreshes. So if you want to run this job status on a TV, you certainly can do that. So it's kind of a visual variance detection, if you will, and it's very simplistic employee engagement. The other thing we wanted with this is that we wanted very simple performance metrics. So these are pre-built dashboards that'll give you job to shift time, labor efficiency, and the like. We've got parts per day and some throughput optimizations that look to see how we're performing across all areas of the business. And then we get into some scrap and various detailed analysis related to scrap analysis. So in ShopFloor Pro, we'll just go over there. Like I said, this is a standard part of our application. Now I'll just log in here. We can have all types of assembly areas, everything from CNCs to quality, welding, and the like. And what you want to do is you may want to actually decide what they need to do in that given area, right? Sometimes it could be 2 or 3 functions you want, and other times it's more. Obviously, I need an employee ID. I'll just go in as number 1, and it looks like that I'm been active for a little period of time, right? So here, if I have any messages, notice that I have an alert functionality that's within this. When an alert sent out by the supervisor or the employee, that communication is it gets pushed up or either down, right? Now in this case, we've set it up to where the operator must confirm the message. Why is that important? Maybe there's a quality concern or some notification that goes out that you want to make sure every operator read that message. Not really a great way to do that in Sightline today. But this is what we considered would be very important for an environment where supervisors need to communicate out to the welding group or the CNC group, and they want to make sure when an operator comes in that they see the message, and then they have to mark the message as read. So that's kind of why that's there. It could be for quality, it could be safety, it could be a whole number of reasons of how you'd want to apply this across your environment. The other thing you can do is I don't have any jobs running. We can start one of those in a second. But here, for this particular operator, they can also go out and send an alert. So in the send of alert, I'm actually in supervisor mode, so that's why I get everything. But I could send out a note to the whole CNC group, and everyone that I've got attached that is going to get the alert that I would send out. So it's an opportunity that, makes it real simple, coming out of a supervisory mode here, and I'm going to go back in as an employee, and we'll just go in and show like a standard job queue. So making this real simple, right? I can see that my job queue's got 44 jobs. Right. Well, I've got a lot of them here. We can assign out just to individual work centers. We can assign out to assemblies and the like. You can just have this to be as little or as simple as you want it to be. And then based on that area, it's going to filter the jobs and the like. So you get a very simple list of what you want to do. So within these, you click on a job and you can see the status, what's been expected, actuals from all the numbers, received, complete, moved, and scrapped, all in one screen. And then, so if I'm really wanting to report against this particular work center, I click the little green button, and then I can go over here and I can look at materials list. I can look at my drawings, and the materials list is going to show you everything that's on there, what's been required, what's issued, and is anything in backflush mode. So you know where to not expect the material as part of something you would need to account for or maybe issue. So it kind of gives the operator the status. Obviously, we can select if we have individual resources. It does prescribe to the whole Cloud Suite Industrial resource group, if you will. But really, to start a run, it's pretty simple to hit a button, and now I've started the run. It shows me that I have 3 hours expected, my tack time for this. And now I'm sitting here, I'm running one job. I can stay right on this screen and I come back and I do my end run, or I can go ahead and exit out, and then I can see that the green button is lit up. That gives me a visual indication that I'm actually doing something. And then when I click the button, I can see that my active jobs, and it shows me my current accumulated time that's going against that particular work order. And so there's a number of things that you can go in and you can take off and make simple. Remember, these are very simplistic transactions and they're very flat in nature. It just is that next step between somebody doing it on paper and then needing the advanced capability of Factory Track. That was really the whole goal, is to give someone just a real simple way to do that. Under the supervisory area, this is where the supervisor can see all the jobs that are running. They can also go in and see what their employees are engaged in. You can see I only got one employee that's doing anything, but they can also manage their employees and manage their teams. So in here, this particular supervisor has these employees. We've got all those information in there. And then what permissions does that individual have? So here for like Jared, for example, he doesn't really have any permissions. Maybe he's new and we're still under the onboarding section. So now we're going to go, okay, I will let him do just a standard job transaction, and I'm going to set him up to go, he's part of assembly. So when he goes in, he's only going to see jobs for assembly, and he's only going to be able to do a standard job transaction, right? So that could be something as simple to do that. And then we can, obviously we've connected him to David. That's his supervisor. That's who I'm logged in as. So I'll be able to see all the activity for that individual. So we want to make this really simple, make this just easy to use. The other thing you can do is you can assign out teams. So here you can see I have a number of teams in play. It's nothing more than you go in and hit the add button. You give it a team name, the best team ever, or the A team. I like that one. And then you just assign people out to the A team. And then now we can do a transaction, and it'll basically account for the individuals that are part of that team. So just trying to make it simple. There again, the whole goal is to try to be somewhere beyond doing things on paper and then needing the sophistication of what Factory Track and all the shop floor and those capabilities are. So that's just a really good overview of around the equipment automation and the worker automation. So with a few minutes I got left, I'm going to cover the next topic. And it's actually something that we're working with Infor on and going to be presenting at Infor Now. If you haven't heard of that, that's a conference coming up in a few weeks in New Orleans. And one of the projects that we're working on is around utilizing all this utilizing all this robust functionality within Prophecy that can help drive the AI and ML models that Infor is producing. One of the models they produced is around asset risk and criticality. So this model is its whole goal is right here. It's predicting the risk of an asset failing, which obviously gets into equipment failures and downtime and all those great things, right? So we want to have Prophecy with its IoT help augmenting all that rich sensor data and all the manufacturing data. So this model is really targeting at-risk equipment. It's notifying when levels get exceeded. So think of prophecy as putting you in present. With this data running through the AI and ML engine, now this puts us in future. And in future, we have a lot of opportunity to be predictive as well as prescriptive. And I'll talk about the difference between those two. So they've got a number of AI and ML models, but we're really working right here with trying to maximize the life of the assets, trying to get very predictive and future oriented related to this. So how prophecy works is we'll have all those rich variables, all the IoT data, all the maintenance history, all the part information, part profile, right? All those part characteristics, manufacturing characteristics, and machine characteristics are going to feed this ML and AI engine, which based on that, it learns. There's a number of things that go into those very complicated models. And Infor has a ton of data scientists on staff that do this. And then obviously we get out of that really our asset strategies around predictive maintenance, if you will, and then how to maintain life of assets and all types of things. But then in there, we get business decisions about, we want to go out and then mitigate that. There's visualizations within these models. We have assets in red that are our critical assets that have the highest probability of failure. We also can look at all assets within the risk category, the ones that are exhibited based on age or probability that the model determines. And then from this, it can now create alerts and it can create maintenance tickets and the like, just like what we did in real time over in Prophecy. This now can say, hey, this asset right here, top one, it is going to fail in exactly 2 months and 3 days. And let's go ahead and get preventative maintenance scheduled during a off shift or a time in which we do not take away value dollarized production and we mitigate unplanned downtime. That's the whole goal of these models. So we're going to be at Infor now. We're one of the sponsors, and I'm also one of the presenters. And I'm going to be showing a lot more details around this AI and ML journey. But this is one simple example to kind of take all this journey and all this great information and how now we start to utilize it in a very different fashion. So with that, I'm right on.